Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I am very pleased to say that we are Speaker Insight, where we help speakers, authors, and coaches to build a portfolio business on your terms. And my name is Helena,
And I'm Kelly.
and we have the lovely Alex Merry with us, but of course, I'm not going to let him speak until all of you actually come on board. And we have gone live about a minute early, which is really quite unusual for us. But we see that you're already joining us. So, for those of you who are joining us live, brilliant welcome. And for those of you who are watching this on the replay, we love a hashtag replay. You know that. If you are a regular watcher, if you're not, the chances are that you may not actually be inside the Connection Hub yet. If not, why not? Possibly because you don't know. But if you don't know, the Connection Hub is really the place where it's the group that's associated to Speaker Insight, where speakers, authors, and coaches, and all the people like Alex who actually support them to go and do their thing in the world, be the change makers that you are in the world. That's where all the action really happens. We call it like the after party. It's sort of where everybody gets to hang out with each other and simply find out loads. So please do come and join us. Kelly at the moment is sharing this out so that we go live inside the Connection Hub, inside Changemaker. And so I'm sure she'll pop you a link very shortly, or indeed, so that you can actually join. There we go. So all sorted. So we're going to start off with a little bit of buzz in our business because we like to know what's going on in your world. So, what's exciting? What's intriguing? What are you looking forward to? What are you celebrating having just done? We like to know what's going on in the world of our speakers, authors, and coaches. So, let us know, even if you're doing the replay, we still want to know what you're up to before we go into finding your voice as an introvert. And there's a lot of really good stuff. Hey, Adam, nice to see you. Welcome. And indeed, interestingly enough, a lot of people were actually liking the idea of the title of this. More people than usual. I guess some of the more introverted people were excited about seeing the topic around this. So
This is the challenge, right? We're going to have to get our introverts, which I am a fellow introvert, and we'll disclose our introvert extrovert status as we go along, right?
yes.
But we're going to challenge our introverts to actually not just be a lurker on this live, even if it's just a little wave. Don't have to say anything. Just show your presence.
The emoji of choice.
Yeah, and let us know that you're watching. And ideally, we want you to ask questions throughout. This is the time when you've got a real expert with you here to help you find your voice and actually come out as an introvert, like coming out of the closet. But I know it might be tough. What we're acknowledging is it might be, not the natural thing for you to show your face and to ask comments and to do that type of thing, but push yourself this time. And even if you find it really hard, then just PM Speaker Insight and we can answer your questions and pass them on to Alex if it's a real push. But we're glad that you're watching live.
and there's just a really nice invitational space around this. But before we get there, so please do kind of take a gulp and share the buzz in your business. We are going to share the buzz in our business. We're actually really excited. So inside the Connection Hub, we actually have the new social learning units. Now, we've been doing this for about 2.5 years, where we show up every Tuesday at 1:00 for a live in the UK anyway, whatever time it is for you, we acknowledge that. And what we've just done is put all of those lives into social learning units so that, because we got some feedback that everybody loves these and there's so much information to learn from. So it actually comes into, where do I find the social media stuff? Where do I find things around creating products or events? Where do I find out things about actually managing myself or managing my mindset, my confidence? So we've actually split them up into various training categories that actively allow you to, so when you're thinking about writing a book or when you've got your head into book writing, we have a whole section on book writing and publishing, for example. So please do check out the units. They are there for you to make it a little bit simpler for you to learn your craft and do what you're actually doing. So we've got some comments coming in already.
I have to acknowledge Tim's emoji, because that is actually Tim, probably my emoji, which is the geek.
Totally love it, and welcome, Tim.
We're gonna because I know one of the people that is here he's saying that it's a blend of both extrovert and introverted extroverts. And I know that Alex did a poll actually on his LinkedIn page, which I'll put his LinkedIn link soon so you can see it. But actually there is that blend, and I think one of you two are a blend of both introverts and extroverts, aren't you?
Yeah. Just a little bit.
So we're going to cover that. We're going to cover what if people don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Or actually, there's a lot of myth busting, I think, that has to often go on around introversion. And we're going to cover that in the next half an hour.
Which is good. The other bit of buzz, just because I'm excited kind of for it, and I may even need to do a poll because I've had many people write to me. I'm out of self-isolation. Yay! Which is really exciting.
No, she went to Denmark. She missed the deadline, came back and had to self-isolate for 15 days.
And then 2 days into it, we go into tier 2, lockdown-ish kind of behavior. So I made the most of my Friday, is all I can say. I made the most of my freedom on a Friday, which is really good. But one of the things that I actually did as a result of that was I ran one of my vision board workshops, and it was the 47th one I've ever run, which is really rather amazing. And it was really good. And I've had loads of people kind of speak to me about actually they'd love to come and do one. So if you have a preference, if you are thinking about that, weekday or weekend, that's the question that I actually have. So please do pop that in. If you what would you prefer to do something like that on? That would be great information for me. Alex, before we get you to introduce yourself to the world, Kelly's been kind of teasing everybody with it a little bit. What's the buzz in your business?
You know what? It's the poll that I put on LinkedIn yesterday. Just thinking about it. It's so, you know what? It's such a strange thing. Sometimes I think, I might be going for a walk or on a run or something like that. And I think, you know what? I've come up with some absolute social media goals. Everyone's going to love it. Spent ages crafting the post, find a nice picture to put up. Deadpan, nothing happens. Like no comments, nothing. I then put this poll up yesterday morning, and I've had more engagement, more responses from that than on a post. That's the most engagement I've had for such a long time. I would love to know how it works, why it is the case, but it is what it is. So I'm buzzing about that at the moment. It's this whole kind of introversion, extroversion, where you fit on the scale. I think people like to reflect, don't they? And as you said, and we'll cover this a little bit later, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about where you fit on the scale and how it relates to the way we communicate.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've put your LinkedIn link there, Alex, so people can go and take that poll themselves, or at least see the results as well, because the results are interesting.
The results are fascinating.
Yeah, they really are. And particularly the comments that sit alongside it. So let us go right back to the very beginning. So why have we got you on here? So tell us a little bit, Alex Merry, tell us a little bit about your background, certainly in the speaking industry, but also how comes you're doing what you're doing now? So give us a little bit of the history so people get a sense of why we've got you on talking about this.
Sure. I mean, I'd love to know why you've chosen me, to be completely honest. But no, so I think if my teachers could see me now, they would be very, very surprised that I do what I do. At school, I actively avoided public speaking like the plague. I think my first memory of perhaps like sign that I had elements of an introverted personality was when I turned up to play school for the very first time. I remember that first day. I can't have been much older than 3, but I just remember turning out this massive room, all these kids already there playing, and I was completely overwhelmed. And it was only since we chatted the other week that that memory has kind of come back. And I think that's certainly set a precedent. But I mean, long story short, I bumbled my way along through sort of university and things like that. I literally just did what I kind of fell into. I studied sport and exercise science at university. I became a football coach, which actually there's something interesting that I can link back to in a bit on that.
Okay.
And then I ended up co-running the student marketing company. And we decided for some reason, it wasn't me who decided this, that our growth strategy would be to spend 3 months of the year traveling in the back of a Peugeot 7, speaking every single day at university campuses. And that was my boot camp into public speaking. I did 7 3-month tours.
That's the best story I've heard.
The point is, right, is both of us being an introvert, and the fact that, you know, I'm the same. I wouldn't leave an answer phone message in case I got it wrong. All these things around communication was my biggest thing. And then when I became an ed psych, I used to have to run school assemblies. So similar to you with the student thing, you push yourself in it, but aren't students the worst audience? Because they haven't been paid to be there, they don't want to be there, they're cheeky, and you're like, oh my god, why have I done this?
So at the time with this business, it was before social media, and we were a new company, so no one had a clue who we were. So, and the way we kind of recruited students was we'd run a meeting at 1 o'clock. So our morning would be spent trying to find ways to get students to turn up to this meeting. We had no email addresses or anything like that. We decided that the most effective way would be to do lecture shout outs. And a lecture shout out was turning up at 9 o'clock on campus to a load of students who were hungover and quite frankly rather not be at the lecture, but they managed to get there. And you'd walk in, and you'd already get a few looks. Who's that guy? And then you'd speak to the lecturer and say, "Look, I've got a job opportunity for some students. Any chance I could just let them know about the opportunity before your lecture starts?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." And we basically had a 1 minute, 1 minute to pitch what was a door-to-door sales opportunity, charity fundraising, door-to-door sales. And we had to try, and what we do is, because we're trying to create a buying atmosphere and make ourselves come across as far bigger than we actually were. Yeah. We say, so we've got this meeting at 1 o'clock. And if you'd like to come along to the meeting, it's going to be really busy. Probably not, but it's going to be really busy. And you're going to need a ticket. And we'd have these like flyers that we decided to call tickets to try and build them up. If you'd like to come along, put your hand up and I'll make sure you get a ticket. And at 9 o'clock, you can imagine what response is. Deadpan. Nobody puts their hand up. And I've got to say, you know, that was one of the pivotal reasons why I've ended up doing what I'm doing. To be able to stand up on stage and have the worst response thrown back at you, which is basically humiliation. And then, you know, a complete tumbleweed. But then when you get the hands up, it's like a Mexican wave. One hand goes up at the front. Everyone starts putting their hands up. It's unbelievable. And so, but going through that and learning how to do that, you start to stop caring about what people really think. And you start to become a little bit more comfortable in your skin and owning what you're going to say, and realize that if they don't have to like what you say, they don't have to like it. That's okay. You do what you do you. So then, you know, I skip forward. I end up running... curating a TEDx event in Southwest London, TEDx Clapham, for a number of years. And that was really my intro into public speaking as an amazing medium to create large-scale change, particularly when you put a talk up online that can be used as a showpiece for people to see. So that was like a massive penny drop moment for me. The first TEDx event I ran, we had some amazing people speak, but some of those talks were being used to lobby the UN. I'm like, serious? Wow. And, you know, one of those talks ended up changing government legislation in the UK. You know, some amazing things ended up happening. And I think that there is no better medium to share a message if it's important.
Yeah. And that is no matter what your preference, because, you know, a lot of people think, don't they? And I know we're going to talk about this, that introverts don't speak. But you're living proof that they do, right? This is something which is not, it's an energy style rather than a delivery or something. I know that Tim's just said, if anyone else is wrestling with the awful LinkedIn interface.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
You're so amazing.
Thanks for having our back.
I love your geeky good self.
He lives up to his geeky emoji. That's what we like to say. And so what and I think we're saying that, especially in the times at the moment where all these shifts are happening, right, with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, and you know, people are, well, I'm seeing, and I'm interested in what you're seeing too as well, Alex, is the trends that people are, and the requirements to people to find this voice, because typically we're used to the extroverts owning the speaker space, or, you know, the spotlight space, whatever medium that might be on. And so, but I think what we put on the promo post for this quiet leadership, I think is really emerging at the moment, and especially with shifts going on where power doesn't mean loud, right? And so what are your thoughts? What are the trends that you're seeing? I know that you're in this space of public speaking.
Can I go back one? So, Alex, do you want to give us your definition? Just because for some people who are watching, they may or may not actually Kelly kind of did a really fly by night, it's an energy style. So before you answer that, can you just go back and go, what are we talking about when we talk about the definition of introverts and extroverts? Just so that everyone's on the same page around that. That would probably be quite helpful.
Yeah, I think the most the simplest way to put it is introversion and extroversion is kind of a scale, and really where we fit on that scale is about how we respond to different levels of stimulation. So by stimulation, it could be visual stimulation, it could be noise stimulation. It's not just about, I think there's this big misconception that introverts very antisocial. couldn't be further from the truth. It's just a different type of interaction that they feel more comfortable in. But they are still able to interact in other environments. They might not buzz off it as much, but they're able to.
And so
I think that
if you go back to your childhood experience of that nursery, that overwhelming of noise and people playing and not knowing where you fit in, for an introvert, that's a nightmare. But you could be the most social person in that group if you found your little corner chatting to one or two people and actually not being that full on, that social butterfly. You can still be social, right? But just not that overwhelming.
It's just a different way of doing so. So I just wanted to make sure that was there. And now, go for your life around what Kelly was asking.
Well, it's just, it's just a different style, isn't it? And I think there are a couple of things before I go on to Kelly's point. One is I think there's a big misconception that how introverted or how extroverted you are and where you fit on that scale is linked to shyness, or they mistake it for shyness. And I think that there's a distinct difference. Shyness is described if you look in science journals, and someone who I highly recommend people read into is Susan Cain, who's done a huge amount of research on the power of introverts and where they fit and their place and where their place should be in this world. But shyness is essentially a fear of social judgment. So if you start interacting with somebody and they have a fairly deadpan expression on your face and you perceive that to be a negative expression, then there's a good chance you're actually quite a shy person. Or if you've got a social engagement coming up and you feel a little bit nervous or anxious about it, you've got some shyness as part of what it is that you experience and what you do. So they're two slightly different things.
Yeah.
What's really interesting with what's been happening recently, and you talk about Black Lives Matter, is I see a couple of things here. The first thing I see is that when people feel like they've got a higher purpose or an important message to share, they're far more likely to do it. It changes the perception of why they're perhaps sharing it. We often get told in our careers, you've got to speak up, you've got to broadcast your message and speak out there. But unless you can link that as to why you might be doing it, sometimes that there's not enough of a reason to necessarily go and do it.
That drive, is there? There's that sometimes it's like, if your purpose and your message is bigger than you can't make you the excuse. You have to get out of yourself and find a way to actually make sure it happens.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, one of the first things that anybody needs to do, regardless of whether they're introverted or extroverted, but particularly introverted people need to do, is work out what is the change that they're trying to create. What is their higher purpose? And buy into that themselves and give themselves permission to link themselves to it and stand up for that. And when you do that, suddenly this kind of, when you put the cause first, suddenly this question as to, well, should I stand up and speak? Should I not stand up and speak? It's not a question. Of course you should. It's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, one of the things that I noticed curating TEDx Clapham was we get, so a good example is back in 2018, we had 400 people apply to speak for 12 speaking positions. We chose one person, and the rest I had to convince. I had to find them somewhere and then headhunt them and convince them that they should share the message they were going to share.
Wow, that's one that's insightful for people who want to apply for a TEDx to understand.
For sure.
Competition, and that's just TEDx Clapham that you're talking about there, right?
Yeah.
Then also that balance aspect that you've just given us an insight to is really interesting.
For sure. And just for people, sort of that whole piece around, actually, if I can extend and go for the thing that's bigger than me, that actually allows us to come out of ourselves, because it's a different perspective. So I really, really love that. And I suspect that and I'm loving what Aura's saying, that it's a great topic to raise, and there's many thanks for it. And I suspect that there are going to be quite a few people who are just going, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I can shift how I'm thinking about how I might show up in this way. Because actually, I think a lot of people don't think of themselves as speakers, or they don't think of speaking as something that suits their personality. They would rather be writing or researching in some way. So just that whole difference between how an extrovert and an introvert, and the scale in between, because we haven't really sort of talked about that. How do people approach it? How might they actually go about doing it in a way that suits their personality?
Well, maybe reframing it is a great place to start. So a really good example from personal experience was I started coaching people from the age of like 12. I did my football qualifications and I became a football coach. But and the second I was given title football coach, it suddenly changed the way I felt standing up in front of people. I wasn't even a good player. That was the funny thing. But the second I stood up and I was in front of other people, my purpose had completely changed. All my job was to help people get better at something. It wasn't to convince them of anything or anything like that. And that was how it started. And if you look at the very best speakers, particularly if you look in the world of thought leadership, I know you've got loads of authors and so forth. And no wonder this is a popular topic, because what a perfect pastime to be doing, writing a book. It's a very introverted activity. Yet when you've got that book published and then you've got to go promote that book, often you've got to tap into other elements of your personality and work out how you can make them fit. But it's reframing it rather than being the ego and the personality behind the book that's being written. It's just educating people, just teaching people something perhaps that they didn't know before. Maybe that's a great place to start.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you say that, because of course I'm always struck by one of the very first times I heard Brene Brown, who was essentially kind of wearing the researcher's hat, doing that introverted piece around, wow, I've done all of this and now I need to get that out there. So what do I need to do? And spending a year building up to, I'm going to go out on stages and I'm going to get this message out. And so that little incremental step by step that you've just said really does hit home, I think, for a lot of people. We do what we do.
I think it's also interesting to see how, even in the last decade, how the platforms have changed for people. Normally it would be those large conferences and stages that thought leaders would be able to get their message out there. And typically, a lot of those people would be more on the extroverted scale, because they've had the confidence to apply. And, that whole having that sea of people in front of you is scary for anyone, but especially from somebody's energy style doesn't relate to that. But I think with the development of things like podcasts, that's quite a good way for introverts to get their message heard and seen, but actually not have the energy of lots of eyes looking back at them, or the actual immediate interaction with people, because it's a recorded thing and then played later. And similarly, if people aren't used to I don't like it when you can't see the interaction from people. I actually need that feed for me. Otherwise I think, oh my God, is anyone there? But interviewing people is sometimes quite a good way to actually get your voice across and actually have some companionship, whether it's a Facebook Live or a podcast.
And the thing is while you feel like you need that feedback, for other people that feedback might be too much. I've worked with people, particularly over the last few months. Now everything's going remote, and remote is just being accepted as the norm, particularly for now. There are some people who are like, I can't do it without. I need faces. I need lots of faces to stare back at me and smile at me and nod and at least look like they're writing something down. Other people are like, nah, this is way easier than having to present in a meeting. I don't get to see anybody. It's all on my own terms, which is amazing. But what's also interesting is we talk about making the environment right for you. There are lots of some of the best speakers I've ever worked with, but also some of the best thought leaders and so forth out there. They consider themselves to be introverted. And what they've done is they've made the platform work for them. So while on one side, we see this kind of, you might be at a conference and there are thousands of people or hundreds of people at the conference. And you've got this pressure to speak and perform, all the normal, pre-performance anxiety things that anyone experiences, regardless of their personality type. But also there are other ways to look at it. Like, if you're delivering in a high production kind of thing, the lights are so bright on you, you can't see the audience. There was someone took an amazing photo from TEDx Clapham where a speaker was up on stage and you could see the whole theatre, but you couldn't see anyone in there. So it's like you're just in a room by yourself, which actually introverts like being alone sometimes. So can you create and can you reframe it to just, well, this is your stage, this is your environment, and that's your kind of safe place. There's not lots of people around you asking you lots of different questions. So there are different ways of starting to frame the experience.
And can I ask a question? This is just because I know that you are a speaker trainer and you've probably seen this quite a lot. Is it a trend, or do you see it as the introverts tend to want to practice more than extroverts want to wing it more? Is that something we should see? Because I'm thinking of the introverts in that space, and you saying, what can you control? If they stood on that stage and got used to a blank theatre, and actually go, it's not going to be any different when there are loads of people here because you're not going to be able to see them, then they start using that muscle and it feels familiar and they're okay. But I find a lot of extroverted people go, I got this, I'm all right, and they wing it a little bit more. Is that something that you find?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But I don't think it's necessarily linked just to introversion or extroversion. I think there's a big difference in gender. Men love to speak before they think.
And again, generalizations, sort of are all kind of in there, aren't they? I certainly think that that's an element. I think that one of the things where perhaps introverts can fall and can kind of succumb in a negative way in the lead up to perhaps speaking at a conference and so forth is perhaps they don't let go of the content that they're hoping to deliver. If I asked an introvert to prepare for a speech, I mean, I wouldn't have to actually. I was just going to say, isn't that an oxymoron?
They just do it. I wouldn't worry. They would prepare so meticulously. But I think one of the huge steps that people forget in the lead up to delivering on stage is you've got to let go of the content at some point. And letting go of the content for me involves going on a run the day, the morning of the talk. Like that absolutely changes the biochemical response in my body. Like I know the fight or flight response is going to be triggered, so I give the body what it runs. I'm going to let it run.
Give it.
Yeah, and just hope I don't punch someone on the way.
Yeah, completely.
But then it's. You think introverts are overstimulated by environments. Well, if you think about their brain is going to be overstimulated by the amount of things that they want to say and they want to cover. And they just need to get to a point and draw a line under the sand. And in my kind of pre-performance rituals, it's the second I come back from that run and I walk into the house, whatever happens, happens. It's let go. It is what it is now. And if people can do that, it will really help them and perhaps enjoy the experience a little bit more.
Yeah, so I want to honor Haley for what she's saying, and just before I do that, by reading this out because it's a really interesting point. I also want to say that just talking about the stage and kind of being on the big stage, actually, I think there's a real thing to be said for networking is also speaking, and actually that can have an even bigger piece or be an even bigger effect on an introvert because it's so overwhelming that actually doing the talk from the stage can feel safer in some way than actively the bit afterwards when people come up and talk to you about it. So
because you've got
there's
that
part of the
isn't it? The stage is like your
exactly
boundary, but when you're in networking, like they're coming at you left, right, and center.
yeah, and usually, and sort of like so it's that preparation for the chances are because you've done your preparation, because you're saying what you're saying and people will respond to it, actually steeling yourself not for the bit on stage but to actively also go prepare myself for the questions that will come afterwards. And how I do that, Kelly and I do a nice team up as far as that goes, because I'm usually the person that kind of absorbs and takes in a lot of the conversation that happens after we've done something,
And I
because
go and hide in the toilet.
and she kind of goes away and sort of
I like your
hides. Now
style.
we happen to have that, so I just want to put that in there to actually say that part of the preparation as an introvert is that you become aware of what is the whole thing going to do, so that you have the energy for it for the whole of that period of time. So I wanted to say that, and then do let me share this bit by Haley, because I think it's really, really important. And thank you so much for sharing it, and Aura's as well. So we've got, so Haley says, I have to say, I've just been in the process of finding a full-time job as I build my coaching practice on the side. It's very interesting when you're asked to do a personality test. And it's interesting that when you choose the introverted choice, the color is red. And when you choose the extroverted option, the color is green. So visually, this is saying introvert, not good, extrovert, great, interesting experience.
Stop and go as well, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, actually. I was on a coaching call a few weeks ago, and I just asked everyone to type into the chat where they rated themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 between introverted and extroverted. Extroverted being 1, introverted being 10. And everyone puts their answers into the chat. And then I was like, oh, so you're introverted, you're extroverted, you're But no, it's like, it's amazing. It's amazing how we associate one thing as being better or whatever than the other. It's completely the same. And
and just while we're at that, because we haven't touched on this term, I know that Adam mentioned it a little bit earlier about the mix of the two, but if people are saying, okay, it's not that polarized for me, how would you help people identify if they're an ambivert, Alex? What would that look like to them?
Well, ambiverts have got split personalities. No, not at all. So ambiverts, it just very much depends on the situation. Okay. In some environments that your typical introvert might find overstimulating, they're actually okay in that kind of environment. And then in other environments, then it depends. I found, and I don't think anyone is strictly just introverted or strictly just extroverted. And I'd love to know what people would have done had they rated themselves a month before lockdown, the first time round, and now, because our environment has changed. We're not seeing as many people as we used to. And I'm sure that people's where they feel they fit on the scale has shifted slightly. Yeah. I think I class myself as an ambivert, because I have times where hit me up with Ministry of Sound back in the day. Love a bit of house music straight at the front, get properly into that. For a lot of people, that would be their worst nightmare. But there's a side to me that loves a bit of that occasionally. Yeah. So it just depends.
So it's very context specific.
Very context specific.
And it also preference and confidence. If it's a familiar environment, you're okay with that, then you also feel like you can become a little bit extroverted because you feel safe and you become familiar with the people or the environment. But then when it's something completely new, you retreat right back into that introversion side of things, and you sort of like a little tortoise poking its head out every now and again.
Yeah, completely. And you've got to remember that just shrinking back into that environment, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that way that you actually go to re-energize again. So if I'm with people, I'll do it, and I'm quite happy doing it, but I cannot do it for as long as Helena does it for. I need that time to actually go to a quiet place or a solitary place to then re-energize and then come back out again. For me to be like when we run our 3-day retreat, I'm really upfront with the delegates that are there that I'm there. I'm 100% when I'm in the room, and I won't join you for dinner and I won't join you for breakfast because I need that time. Otherwise, I won't be on my game. And I think this is the thing about finding your voice as an introvert. It is, you know, just like Hayley and what Tim's saying about that's awful. You don't have to be make excuses for being an introvert.
For sure.
Right? It's actually honoring it and saying, this is the benefits of having me this way. This is me acknowledging who I am and actually saying I'm adapting so we can all get the best of the situation here. And also, I think, you know, Brendan Bouchard used to be my mentor, and he used to say when he was speaking on stage that he says, look, I'm going to give myself permission to be a complete geek. I'm sure Tim would like this. And he'd like geekily dance. And he said, I'm not going to be this person that's like really American and extrovert and shouty and high-fiving Tony Robbins style, because that would be being fake. And so the couple of things that I know that we spoke about, and I'd love for you to articulate this a little bit more, because I know that you are a speaker trainer and you've done TEDx stuff, and I know I always put you in the TEDx camp and tag you in those comments in the hub, but you very much are about helping people craft and understand and own the story element to their voice, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. And I think if you can tell us a little bit more about that, but I think this is the bit that helps introverts work, because when you're finding your voice because it has purpose, because you're serving others, because you feel you as a coach, you had a duty. It's not just I want to speak for the sake of being heard. I have a duty. I have something that I'm doing. This then gets them over their ability or I'm not allowed to do that. That's not my natural style. And then, as you said, the practicing, the rehearsing, the finding the context, the platforms to deliver that voice is what we need at the moment because of this quiet leadership revolution. So tell us a little bit about how you help people get that confidence in their skills to predominantly speak, but not have to be this loud performer.
So before I do that, one thing I want to say is that I think great communication is about empathy and it's your ability to understand your audience. That's at the very, very heart. And the reason why we need more introverts taking that step to sharing their message is because I think, generally speaking, they are incredibly empathetic, and the ability to be able to connect with people on a level that is beyond what most people are able to connect with is a real skill. When I work with people, the first thing that we do is we focus on the outcome and get really clear on what the outcome of the talk is going to be. We spend 2 weeks coming up with 3 sentences.
Wow.
The first sentence is, what is the legacy of my talk going to be?
Beautiful.
Which essentially is, when I've got off stage, what are the audience going to go and do next? What's different? And you got to be able to pin that down to a sentence. The second thing they've got to work out is, what is the message that they need to share? And that's linked, in TED speak, that's linked to the core idea. What is the idea that I want to share? What is the thing that is going to make that legacy come to life? And then the third thing we focus on is, why am I the right person to be delivering that message?
Beautiful.
How am I ever right?
From an introvert's point of view, I think introverts would naturally put themselves last. So it kind of it models outcome first, then the kind of content, and we'll deal with me at the end. But taking them through that journey, it works really nicely for them. But I think the other thing that's important is small steps, building incrementally towards delivering something big.
Well, it's really interesting because, of course, that's what Aura was just saying. She said, so had my first live video exercise yesterday with more than 40 takes to prepare for it. You could say I'm an introvert, right? So
I've
there's
been there.
yes, and I think there is, there is something to be said for so I'm almost going to open up this kettle of fish around, there is a perfectionism that actually kind of sits. When I work with introverts rather than extroverts, there's a I want to get it right, and it's this beautiful impetus to get it so that it actively works inside them, but mostly for others, so that
That's the
there's
thing,
that in there.
It's you want to have. Do you want to be in control?
Yeah.
Because you're so dedicated to serve the purpose, to serve other people, which is what you said, Alex, about putting that up front. And you're like, oh my God, if I don't do this right, it's not so much I'm going to look like an idiot. It's the fact that I've not served the people that I'm here, and that's what I need to do. You're so driven. That empathy is so there. So Aura's loving those questions, by the way.
Yeah, but what I love that you said earlier is this ability, and I think this is the bit that a lot of the introverts might need to learn, and I love that you have this, is that then to let go of that. And that's actually the piece. Once you've done that rehearsal, once you've done all of the prep that you're talking about, and I love that you've taken a little time over those 3 questions. Once you've actually embedded that, there is this piece that actually letting it go, doing whatever you can to let that go, really is the invitation that makes it go even better. So I love that you've got that kind of mix in there, and people are, loving the questions. I'm loving your questions from a 4 intentions perspective. I'm like, oh yes, that makes complete sense, which is good. So here's the thing. So we could witter on with you for quite some time, and I suspect that lots of people would have lots of questions. And for those of you who are quietly wanting to ask questions but not wanting to do so publicly, PM myself, Alex, or Kelly, or send a message through to the Speaker Insight page, and we will answer your questions, because I know that sometimes it's just that little step too far that actually goes in. But how do you
Can I do
support?
one thing? I'm just really
go on.
Following on from Alex's poll. For those of you still watching, can you just shove in the comments if you think you're an introvert, extrovert, or ambivert? And if you're watching it on the replay as well, I just want to see what the audience is. I know it's probably going to be skewed because the title of this is going to attract much more, but I'm still interested.
So we'll see.
It's fascinating.
Hang on a second. Before I ask you that question, let me just follow up from Hayley here. As much as this was challenging, so she's obviously talking about the the situation around it became a landmark moment, really, as I struggled around, should I answer what they think what I think they want me to answer. I got to the point where I got really clear on who I am and what makes me great. So I am a natural introvert and extrovert when needed to be. This process allowed me to fully embrace being an introvert and being fully okay with this. I am so delighted for you, Hayley, that actually you took something that was kind of imposed on you and went through some dark night of the soul stuff, really introvert behavior, and and really came out and just went, no, hang on a minute, in Kiala's style, this is me. Kind of you really have got that.
Don't sing it, Helena, don't sing it.
I wasn't going to sing it. I was simply going to say, good on you, Hayley. And then I was going to read out Tim's thing, because this is the other thing that I think happens, is that after a while they get the sense of something and then want to actually be part of the conversation, which is why we're going on a little bit. So now they're all coming out of the woodwork. So Tim's saying, and obsessing about being a thing doesn't necessarily make it better. At a certain point, you have to trust your insight and energy. And that is just the truth of it. It's beautiful. Thank you, Tim. Really, really, really love that. And so
the thing about obsessing, when you're a thinker, if you're a thinker and you spend too much time thinking about something, what often happens is expectation inflation. You have an inflated expectation of your own performance. You have an inflated expectation of what you think your audience needs you to perform at.
Yes.
And that causes a whole host of worry and trauma that is just not necessary.
Compounding, isn't it? Compounding effect. And I do want to pick up on Tim's point, actually, because I forgot about this, but he's saying about being an introvert and and a HSP, which is a highly sensitive person. And we do have Caroline Ferguson in the Connection Hub, who is an expert in HSP space, and she actually has a free test that you can take to see your level of, on the scale of HSP, of what you are. And HSP is this very much what you were saying, links to introversion, but also around stimuli, so sound and noise and color and all those types of things. So I'll dig out a link for Caroline's test for anyone who doesn't know what HSP is, and I'll put that in the comments after we've finished.
Yeah. So in the meanwhile, whilst people are still answering these bits, and these are wonderful, wonderful kind of comments that are coming through. So Alex, tell us a little bit more about how you now support people to find their voice, especially if they're introverted.
I mean, I work with people in two ways, really. I work with people one-to-one. And I guess, and obviously the other one is group. but I think, I got into this because I got so frustrated with people trying to deliver, or not delivering a message, but being very confident about not delivering anything of substance, being very, very confident in the process. At the heart of everything that I do is, what you say matters. So I spend a lot of time working with people on the content and the impact and so forth. And when we got to a point where like, that's good, then we'll start playing around with, the performance aspects and the strategy aspects and so forth. But I think just knowing that what you've got to say is good and useful and of value, that's a big confidence boost for people too.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
For sure.
So that's where it starts. And I have my flagship program's my public speaking accelerator. And that's that. I run it once a year from January through to April, and take people from coming up with a talk that's got the potential to inspire change, to helping them position themselves to land those engagements, write the talk, and then help them deliver it. And then when the talk's gone out on video, we put a strategy in place so that people can see it.
Oh, beautiful.
And you've got the next intake for that. I mean, we're doing this at the moment.
January, right?
Yeah, so that's in January, that one. Yeah. And then we bring everyone together. So I'm doing the filming day for my last intake. That normally happens in April.
Yeah.
I say I'm doing the filming day. I might not be.
Yeah, don't count on anything at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, we're penciled in for November right now, and we're going to have to do a socially distant filming day. But
still doing.
But yeah, we take everyone through the whole process. We have a lot of fun from that.
Nice.
That's really, really great.
And I know that you also wanted to share a document with our group as well. I've just put the link in for your.
Yeah, so this document, I put it together a few weeks ago. WeTransfer, by the way, are awesome. So we all know WeTransfer is the file sharing app.
Yes.
Oh,
but it turns out they do more than that.
Side of it, the back of it is just, I mean, it's a
awesome stuff
delight.
So they've got two things that I think will be really useful for people here, two tools. First one is called Collect. And Collect is this really simple user-face app for when you've thought of something that might be really good, make really good speech content. Maybe it's a story, or you've read a piece of science that could link really nicely to a point you want to make, or whatever. When most of the time, good content comes in really like
weird places.
Yeah.
Mine's in the shower, and that's why I have Aquanotes, because it's an actual.
You've got Aquanotes. Amazing.
Yeah. Waterproof post-it notes with a pencil that you can actually write while you're in the shower, and it sticks to the shower door.
That's genius. Mine's in the middle of a yoga class, which is super annoying. I have these like full-on epiphanies. Oh my God. Can't do anything about it. Forgotten it by the time I've got out. But Collect is an amazing place to just store all of those things, because when you're under pressure to be creative, it's very, very difficult to be creative. So this is a great way to do that. But then the other thing, and the reason why I brought it up, was because I used Paste for the very first time the other week, and I created this guide on it. And essentially, it's called Lost for Words, but essentially it's a template. I've got 6 questions in there that if you just answer those questions one after the other, and you get a little bit creative with how you deliver those questions, you can create a full speech from those 6 questions.
Nice.
So if you're ever stuck for what should I say next? I don't know, then hopefully the purpose of this guide is just to hopefully help you, just take you through. And it takes you through in a way that takes your audience on a journey that they'll remember too. So it's, gives you a nice structure behind it as well. But anyway, I used Paste App for that, and I thought it was really simple, and I'll probably use it again.
So I've put, because my geeky good self is already a complete and utter fan around those, I've put both of those links in there. So for those of you who want to go down a rabbit hole, I would definitely say get your timers out and set a timer, Pomodoro this one, because you'll be there for ages, because it's just really fun. But there is something to be, catch yourself in the capturing of things and the curating of things, because you never know what's going to be really useful for you. And I think that actually kind of takes away some of those preparation nerves that all of us, whether introvert, extrovert, or ambivert, might actually go through.
Completely. But before this, because this is for introverts, I just want to say, before you give your talk, before you do your performance, let go. Let go. It's going to be fine.
And because they've rehearsed so much, they know it anyway, right? Now you just need to let you be in flow and channel it, because it's there, it's in your subconscious. So you just need to show up now. And a lot of the time, I think when there's audience participation, that's what throws a lot of introverts off, because they're like, hang on a minute, that's not structured in my keynote. And how to actually read the room and be in flow of the energy of the room is a real skill, right? And it's something you have to do through practice.
And practice, and also the thing that we invite people to do more than anything is you have a community of people around you. Don't just do it in isolation. Ask. So if you know that you have an introverted tendencies, and an extrovert who might sort of deal with things, or even another person, any other person, run it by them and just go, what are the points that hit? What are the points at which you might want to ask questions that I may not have thought about? Because that actually just helps. It's, again, another level of preparation, isn't it? We could go on for hours here. So I am going to cut us short. But
this is so difficult not to carry on.
We do have a Facebook Live training in our social learning units now, which is about how to do Facebook Lives. And again, this is something which I know a lot of introverts struggle with, even though it's a different form of speaking. But just what Helena said then, we encourage people in that training to actually set up a private group to invite just friends in, so they can do a Facebook Live and go live and use all the tech and understand how it all works. But it doesn't actually go live to anybody other than the one person that's watching. You can write comments and you get familiar with it. Very similar to doing Zoom presentations now. Don't just do your first one to the real thing. Set up friends, have them in there, get used to the tech. That rehearsal piece is so important to introverts especially, but it should be to everybody. But it's ensuring that you are actually more comfortable with your context and your surroundings, is what Alex said, that's going to increase your confidence in your deliverable on the message rather than the stuff and the energy around you.
And just because we are now going to go on for ages and ages, Joseph, I'm so pleased you asked this question, because it is a really important one. What do you suggest when in a group of people and many people are behaving as extroverts and sensitive/introverts can't get the space to speak, or they just rudely interject? What do you recommend? How do you deal with such situations? What training can you recommend around that?
It's a great question.
It is.
Just brings me back to so many meetings I've been in the past. I think that the natural tendency for anyone in those situations, when you feel like your ideas aren't being heard, is to try and force them out. I actually think that I think one of the most effective ways to get people to listen to you isn't necessarily to give them a statement, but to ask a question instead. Ask a question that gets them thinking about and reflecting on what has just been talked about and all the ideas that have just been talked about here. That just, what it does is in a space where everyone is my idea, and then my idea, and then my idea, then my idea. By asking a question, you're creating this tiny pattern break and this tiny shift in the structure of the meeting. And so because no one's asking lots of questions, it's just it's not forcing your way in. It's
Yeah.
a different route of exploration. It's cutting through the noise.
Yeah,
And
I think you've just put there, right, that he's clarifying that it's in meetings, because obviously this can happen, as you were saying, Helena, earlier, in networking, and that's why I can't stand networking, because there isn't really any rules, so I try and stay away from it. But if it's in meetings or board meetings, my two penneth worth is, one, see if you can influence the person who sets the agenda. Because if you're actually saying, can we put this on the agenda before the meeting, they'll come round and say, Bob, you asked for this. So it creates that space. And secondly, and again, if you have the influence of the person who's holding their meeting, many of you will be familiar with the talking stick scenario. So that really helps the people in the meeting honor and zip it when someone's talking. So if you're not sure what that means, it just means that you can have a physical talking stick, or if you're in a corporate environment, that's not going to work so well. But you basically say, when someone's holding the pen, nobody else can speak at all. Yeah. They can't comment, they can't acknowledge the yes or no or whatever. You have to be silent while that person's talking, and then you pass the pen, the stick, whatever it might be, to somebody else. And then there might be a group discussion afterwards. But that really ensures that, one, it forces people to have their turn, because I'm the person in those meetings that goes, yeah, I don't need to speak, you can bypass me. But it really forces you to have a voice, but it also forces the other people to listen.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great way to finish, only because we could really be here for quite some time, and I love this discussion. So please, let's debate even further inside the Connection Hub. Come and ask the questions that you might even want to ask, and see what shows up inside the group. There are well over 7,500 people in there who might have a penny's worth or two, or some information. But Adam, I absolutely love this. So he says, one of my mentors said to me years ago, so this is for you, Joseph, if you have a heckler or an over contributor, an over talker, give them the microphone. They will either be funnier than you, have value to add, or they will dry up. So either way, you're on a winner. So I just really honor everybody who has, sort of put their pennies worth in today, who's shared what you've been sharing. If you're listening on the replay, please do kind of make your contribution to the conversation, either in here or come inside the Connection Hub and kind of share your thoughts in that way, and reach out to us.
And all the links, so Alex's document, so you can do those questions, his Accelerator program in January 2021.
Very
just
good.
In case, because people are watching this on years down the line on the replay. And also Alex's LinkedIn profile, so you can see the poll, and also his website. So and Alex is in the hub, which I've just put another link to as well. So he's one of our members.
And as we've been going, I've added in, sort of, because Alex and I are both fans of the WeTransfer whole other side that kind of sits in there. Adam, we'll see you later. You are so welcome. So there's a whole bunch of links, which I'm sure every introvert and extrovert will love in this. So whichever you identify with in this moment, we wish you well on your day, in your week. And thank you, Alex, for sharing you.
It's been loads of fun. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care, everyone.